Thank you for inviting me to speak today about supply chains. I hope this is the beginning of a conversation we can continue to have about how to build supply chains differently in a post-COVID world. When I refer to supply chains, I'm talking about people, the farmers, the producers, the processors, the designers, the manufacturers and distributors who get products to our homes and to our shops. As we entered lockdown in March of this year, I, like many parents, was faced with trying to explain to my 5 and 2-year-old the implications of the coronavirus on our way of life. I found my way to a book called The World Comes to My Place Today. It's about a boy called George whose sister has chickenpox, and George can't leave the house because he might be infectious too. You see the similarities. In this joyous tale, Grandad helps George cope with boredom and his increasing sense of isolation by noticing his interdependence. Room by room, item by item, toothbrush, bread, chocolate, coffee, they explore where in the world it has come from. And the book reminded me of the New Economics Foundation's Interdependence reports in the mid to late 2000s. Through mapping where the things we buy in the UK come from, it showed we are hyper-connected to the world and in fact reliant on it to sustain our way of life. We sort of know this, we occasionally check labels to see where things are made, but the details of supply chain, who does what when, are largely mysterious to us and perhaps intentionally so. But in 2020, COVID happened. And our interdependence and the inequity in it was totally laid bare. Changing consumption patterns in countries like the UK caused supply chains to collapse. When people stopped consuming, lead firms and supply chains cancelled their orders. News outlets started reporting things like 40 million garment workers, 40 million in the fashion industry were plunged into immediate destitution when contracts were cancelled and jobs were lost. Put simply, cancelled contracts means no work, which means no income, which means no food to eat. Researchers found that there's been a 70% drop in income among the urban poor and people living in urban slums. IDS's Action Research Programme on the worst forms of child labour, I think it's called Clarissa, found the leather sector in Dhaka in Bangladesh closed most of its leather processing factories. And this left around 25,000 tannery workers at the bottom of the supply chain in great despair about their lives. The emerging evidence is directly implicating decisions that are made in supply chains to Sustainable Development Goal 1 for no poverty, SDG 2 for zero hunger, SDG 10 for reduced inequalities, and SDG 3 for health and well-being. And at this point I'm wondering how The World Came to My Place Today might be written for a child at the other end of the supply chain to George. Say the child of a Bangladeshi textile worker who just lost their job and who hasn't had enough food to eat today. I wonder if the tale would be more cautionary in tone than a joyous celebration of human connectivity. So I think of COVID as a reckoning for global supply chains, a stress test, and they failed millions of people. But they didn't have to. So consumer goods company Unilever placed 500 million euros on the balance sheet to make early repayments to suppliers, particularly small suppliers, so that they could stay in business. Another UK company, the coffee and tea company Betty's and Taylor's, committed to honouring all their long-term contracts, accelerating the flow of money to suppliers where needed, and they opened up credit lines to growers and social lenders. The action Unilever and Betty's and Taylor's took to anchor their supply chains for greater resiliency and sustainability reminded me of the role of anchor institutions in local economies. Traditionally, anchor institutions have been not-for-profit organisations. They're place-based institutions like universities, healthcare trusts, housing associations with large purchasing power. They are able to pool their commissioning and their procurement budgets to irrigate investment in to local communities and keep it circulating so it doesn't trickle out. Now, how do we get more companies like Betty's and Taylor's and Unilever acting like anchor institutions in their supply chains? Well, I thought we could mandate that they do, but free market economics might have something to say about that. Now, the reason corporates haven't historically acted as anchor institutions is that they don't have what we call sticky capital, a connection to a place, which means they cannot easily move operations to another location which seems more financially viable. So airports and football clubs are famous exceptions. So what can we learn from Betty's and Taylor's and Unilever, which other organisations can adopt? Well, when you read about why Betty's and Taylor's used their leadership role within their supply chain to provide security to stakeholders, they refer back to their family business constitution. And this constitution recognises their business does not stand alone. And when you hear Alan Jope, the current CEO of Unilever, speaking, he explains the company's focus on an integrated approach to sustainability echoes the goals of its founders, who in 1870 wanted to be a force for good and to lessen the load of women who bore the brunt of household chores in 1870. But when workers went off to fight in the First World War, they kept people's jobs open and they continued paying wages to their families while they were away from home. So when you look at these two, at first glance, we notice they are both purpose-driven organisations. They sort of have purpose in their soul, which is both heartening and disappointing at the same time, because it takes a long time to shift mindsets in less purpose-driven businesses. And we know that two examples does not a pattern make, they are outliers. But when you look and listen again, you can see what they know to be true, that their own companies are part of an interconnected whole, that company revenue benefits from that interconnectivity, and the decisions key companies make in supply chains impact millions of people's lives deeply. And it's this acknowledgement and this disclosure of impact to their shareholders, to their customers, to each other across the table in the boardroom, which is what created the need for active leadership in their supply chains. So once we realise this, the question or the challenge then becomes, how do we get more investors, more customers, more senior executives aware of the human impact of their decisions in supply chains? And my suggestion is that we make the invisible visible. In my current role at Friday Pulse, I've been working with a very innovative statistician, Nick Marks, to radically change the ways organisations monitor well-being week to week, quarter to quarter. Here is an example of a heat map that one of our clients might see. Across the top, at the left-hand side, they can see how happy people are, which is our ultimate measure of impact. And all the other columns to the right measure key drivers of a positive employee experience. So the balance of time people spend at work versus other aspects of their lives, the extent to which they feel they can influence decisions in their work, and the quality of their relationships at work. Down the side, we have every team, every division, every team, every sub-team listed. And we ask people about their subjective experiences, about how they feel, and we convert answers on a 1 to 100 scale. And this scale is colour-coded from red to green. So at a glance, a senior leader or a HR business partner can see where things are going well and where things aren't. They can see the diversity of experience that exists within their workforce, and they can see where to focus their energies and efforts to improve things. By bringing people's experiences to the foreground, we are shifting the nature of conversations in businesses. We are changing the focus and we're changing the concerns of companies all over the world. We are making workplaces, even globally distributed workforces of 10,000 people, more human. And it's not hard to imagine that we can use digital platforms to account for diversity of experiences in supply chains. We can organise impact data according to key actors in the supply chain, like women, even children. We can use sampling methods to capture the experiences of actors in the informal sector, the informal economy that sits around supply chains, so their experiences can also be included. Fundamentally, I believe getting supply chains to acknowledge and disclose their human impact is a sweet intervention point, because it creates amplifying feedbacks across our financial and our legal sectors. Where impact reporting is strengthening around climate change, for example, we see the creation of league tables and scorecards that highlight the best and the worst performing companies. These legal tables work as a behavioural intervention because no one wants to be at the bottom, just as no CEO wants to see red scores on the Friday platform in the businesses they lead. Where we have impact reporting, we organise pension packages which invest in those companies that are promoting and positively contribute towards the Sustainable Development Goals. Where we have impact reporting, we amplify how the rule of law can be used to protect worker rights and human rights. All these ripple effects celebrate and reinforce the actions of companies like Unilever and Betty's and Taylor's to anchor their supply chains, and they provide the impetus for other companies to follow suit. Just to conclude, I have been working in and around supply chains now for 10 years, and this feels like the first time that the existence of supply chains as discrete socioeconomic entities has truly lodged itself in our collective consciousness, which is why the time is now. Supply chains have become superstructures that affect all our lives and the future that we want. In the intervening years, while waiting for this to happen, I've learned a lot from the way indigenous people organise their food systems. They have invested in their relational systems to form a social safety net. For agriculturalists in northeast India, this looks like exchanges of time, exchanges of seeds and the proceeds of harvest, so that if one family's crop fails, they're not left destitute. For nomadic pastoralists in Kenya, their animals are their family. They treat them like that. They are extensions of them and their way of life. True sustainability and resilience, they have taught me, is not about organising the world so we can go on living as we currently do in countries like the UK. It's about equal and reciprocal relationships between people and institutions, and between people and the natural environment. It's about providing economic and social security like Betty's and Taylor's and Unilever have done. It's about me looking after you and you looking after me. It's about what we invest in each other as well as what we enjoy from each other. At the end of The World Came to My Place today, George goes to bed, clutching his globe and happy and reassured by his new sense of connectedness. I'd like to go to bed tonight, thinking that George will wake up tomorrow or maybe the next day, but hopefully one day before his sister's virus clears up. And he says, "Grandad, that's all well and good, but how should I go to the world today?"